Welcome to A Kind Life. Today I'm joined by Dean Maher. How are you going, Dean?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, very well. Thank you for being here. Really excited to share your story. So thank you so much.
Right, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So, how would you best describe yourself? You've done quite a few things, but if someone said to you, tell us a little bit about yourself, what would you say?
Oh, if I had to give myself a label, it would be vegan first, and then mountaineer, ultra runner would be the things that I'd define myself by. But yeah, that chops and changes every now and then. But that's been the main thing for 8 years.
Yep. And what I really love, and I may look down to make sure I get this right because I don't want to say it incorrectly, but you're the first vegan to have successfully climbed the south face of Everest. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, there's been other people that have climbed. They're on they're kind of vegan and eat plant-based diets, but they would have worn down and leather on the climb. So my summit was the first one with zero animal products, food, clothing, everything. So yeah, that's what I'll define as a vegan summit. So yeah, no animals used in the process whatsoever.
And so that was back before COVID, was it? Was it 2019?
Yeah, 2019 in the glory days. Yeah.
And how did you how does someone prepare for that? Like that's what I'm really intrigued to understand is how do you even prepare physically before you even think about, veganism and not involving animals?
Yeah, it starts for something like Everest, it starts many years before. So yeah, I 8 or so years ago, climbing Everest was like becoming an astronaut to me. It was just something that everyone else does. It was like a dream that's never going to happen. But then, yeah, as you start doing these things and dedicating a bit more time and getting more experience, then yeah, if you persevere with something, all of a sudden something that seemed completely unachievable becomes possible. And then kind of 8 year process of training and dedication, and then halfway through, you kind of look at an Everest training plan and like, oh, I think I could work my way up to that, and then you get it done. So
Where did the idea come from? Like, is it something, have you always been passionate? Like, have you always, as a kid, did you think you wanted to go to Everest? Like, where did you ever, come up with this idea?
no, I never dreamed of climbing Everest. Yeah, lots of people do, but for me, it was never a dream. I only went to Nepal because I traveled around Southeast Asia, and although I loved every country I went to, I never had a favorite. But then everyone that had been to Nepal, just it was their favorite, like guaranteed. So I was like, right, okay, I have to go to Nepal and experience it myself. So then, yeah, just did the Annapurna circuit trek and Annapurna base camp, which took like maybe 3 weeks, and then yeah, that was it. I was hooked. And then I'm the kind of person that I'm never happy doing the same thing. I'll always have to push the boundaries and go a little bit higher, a little bit harder, and yeah, I'm never happy with what I'm doing. So, but that's kind of served me well so far. I don't know how long it can last, but we'll see.
And so would you say now that Nepal is your favorite country?
Yes. Yeah, I've been there. I spend more time there than I do back at home in the UK. So, and Australia. I love Australia, of course.
And so, yeah, like step us through, I guess, I know there'd be a lot of detail, but how did you prepare for this? Like what was the time frame and at what sort of point did you think, yes, I'm going to be able to achieve this?
Yeah, so my sort of training, once I kind of decide on a goal, it's about 8 months. And then it's, yeah, pretty much 7 days a week thing. But yeah, with mountaineering, it's so varied, like the challenges and what you have to train for. So you've got to train for many different things. So yeah, that just involves lots of running, lots of hills, lots of carrying heavy backpacks, weight training, recovery, climbing, um, and then you have to try and work a full-time job on top of that. But yeah, a solid 8 months of pretty much no days off if I can help it. And then yeah, kind of that sort of gets you prepared. But this time around, I had a coach, which I've never had before. which was a bit weird because you have to kind of let go of control. Whereas normally I'm just kind of winging it. I'm kind of pushing every week as I feel fit. But this time I had a coach and definitely pushed me harder, made me do things that I wouldn't have done ordinarily, which seemed to work well.
And I was interested, to understand. So you do have a full-time job as well. Like this is something you do outside of your job.
Yeah, unfortunately, no one will pay me to climb mountains just yet. But if any listeners out there want to do that, they're more than welcome.
And so tell us about the experience actually, like physically, you've got there, you've done all your training, and like explain that to us.
Yeah, so being in the mountains in Nepal is just incredible. Like it's humbling, it's back to basics. Like your phone barely works. It's just you, nature. You're just walking, you're just moving, eating, sleeping, and kind of socializing. So it's a huge reset. And but it's also really uncomfortable. Like the pictures look amazing and pristine, but like for instance on Everest I had minus 46 degrees and the pictures don't show you that. Or the wind and or the lack of oxygen. So it's amazing and beautiful, but it's also quite you're on borrowed time, and it's kind of as peaceful as it can be. It can change in an instant and become like a sort of life or death situation, really. And kind of a part of the appeal, really, because you have to be prepared and you have to make sure you train to sort of cover all these eventualities. And it kind of makes you kind of accountable to what you're doing. And you can run a huge running race, but if something goes wrong, you just get picked up by a car and you go home and it's all good. But on a big mountain, you're in a bit of trouble. So you've got to get everything dialed in pretty well.
Yeah. And is part of that as well, like your mindset, like your mental headspace? Is that what sort of helps you get through the challenge?
Yeah, that's huge as well. That's a massive part. And you've got to be like, you've got to gain the experience as well. That's a part of kind of building the mental strength, and knowing what you're capable of physically and mentally, and kind of building up as you go. But if you don't have the mental capabilities, then none of it's going to happen. It's you really have to learn to put your head down and just keep moving. Like when everything else is screaming and telling you to turn back, and you've just got to keep moving, and that's when you have to really sort of focus on what you're doing and just get it done.
Yeah. And were you in a team of people, I'm assuming?
Yeah, I always go with like a small Nepalese company. So they never have more than like, I reckon 9 or 10 members, like paying climbers. And then we've got our Sherpas and guides that I've known for like quite a long time. So like they're as big a part of the draw to the mountains as the mountain itself is. All these amazing people that you spend like 4-6 weeks with, and they're just so inspirational and incredible. And we can't say enough good things about the Sherpas.
Like I'm intrigued to understand, did they understand, your passion for veganism and what you were trying to achieve? Like, was that something that was known to the rest of the group?
Yeah. I mean, all the Sherpas and the guides and the staff, basically, I've been climbing with them for quite a few years. So they have other climbers go with them as well, because they know that they know what they're doing. It's always interesting to see who you're going to be climbing with, because you always have a huge mix of nationalities and cultures and everything. And almost every climb I've been on, everyone has been very nice, very accommodating, but there's one person that just likes to pick those questions and test you. And every single time, by the end of the trip, they're asking the constructive questions and like wanting to know like how it's done, and rather than just trying to sort of catch you out, which is how it starts off. But no, it's all good fun. And when you do have people like that, you're not just talking to them, you're talking to everyone else that's listening as well. So they can be like super irrational and ask these really crazy questions, and you're like, oh god, yeah, plants don't have feelings, but they're all listening as well, and they can see how stupid, like irrational he's being, and then how just kind of non-confrontational I am, and it kind of works quite well.
Yeah.
You get lots of positive kind of interactions from that point of view.
Yeah. And so what would normally, like, explain the vegan part of you climbing Everest? Like, what did you use or not use, to be able to make this a vegan climb?
Every person up until 2000 and what was it, probably 17, that's climbed an 8,000-meter mountain has used animal products, leather, down, silk, wool, every single one. So the equipment up to about 7,000 meters is all readily available off the shelf. You can buy like really warm synthetic jackets, a lot of them made from recycled materials. You get thermals that are synthetic, gloves that don't have leather, palms or filled with down. It's when you go above 7,000 meter, that's when the suit comes into play, and the big mitts that you have to have. And pretty much all the mitts on the market are either filled with down, or if they're synthetic insulation, then they'll have like goat skin palms. So for a while I had some mittens that were kind of handmade in Kathmandu, but then this year I found a company in the UK, PhD, that make fully synthetic kind of mittens suitable for 8,000 meters. So that's another one ticked off the list. It's like everything veganism, you just need one option. You don't need like a whole cabinet of things. As long as you got that one go-to thing, that's it. You don't need to think about it anymore. And then the suit is the biggest thing to source. And luckily there's a company in Italy called Save the Duck, and they usually make kind of high street puffer jackets, but a while ago they decided to make the first ever fully synthetic suit, and that's what I have today. I'm still trying to get them to make it. I think they're still developing it, and the dream is to get them to make it commercially available, because not only does it appeal to vegans, which there's quite a bit of demand for, but it also appeals to the environmentally conscious people as well, because it's 99% recycled materials as well. So the insulation is ocean plastic, recycled ocean plastic. And then the outer layer is a collaboration with Gore-Tex, and that's also recycled. It's just the zips and the badges that are kind of virgin materials. So yeah, that's the dream, to get vegans and the non-vegans wearing these suits, because it's so much better than the alternatives, I think.
And I'm guessing that, like initially that would have been hard for you to source. Like, did you spend a lot of time, researching how you could find these different items?
Yeah, just constantly going on. You have to go onto every manufacturer's website, find the item, scroll down to the materials, and then pick out. It's the same with reading like ingredients in the supermarket. You've really got to cut through and find the terminology that you know. I got pretty lucky because I came into climbing the bigger mountains at a time when that suit kind of became available. So the one on Everest I borrowed, and then after Everest, Save the Duck made me my own one. And then that's one I have now. But quite happy to sort of lend it out if other vegans need to borrow it, because if they're not making it available, then the annoying thing is when you've got someone that's like 100% vegan, but they're dreaming of climbing these mountains, but the one thing is stopping them is a suit. Then I'd always be happy to help.
And why is that? Like, it's just not made like for public yet, or what's the situation there?
I'm not sure. There's still, because there's three people that use the suit at the moment. There's a Indian climber called Kuntol Joshua, and then there's a Sherpa called Mingma Tenzi, who's incredible. and he wore that same suit on the first ever K2 winter ascent. So he had, I think it was like colder than -60,
Wow.
and he was completely fine. So they're still developing the suit for him. I know that much. So the one he has is even like slightly different to my one. So yeah, I don't know. They're just dragging their heels a bit. So I just need, if people need that suit, email them, show them there's demand, and then hopefully it can be available to the masses.
Yeah. So have you since met anyone, I think not long after, I'm not sure the time period, but after you'd done your summit, there was, I think, was there another vegan that did the northern side?
Yeah, that's Kuntal, and he
Okay.
came up from the north like maybe 5 or 6 days later.
Okay.
So yeah, which is amazing. Like two vegans on the summit in one season, one from the south, one from the north. Yeah, like yeah, it's amazing. And yeah, but then yeah, technically I was the first person on the summit, but I wish I was the 1,000th person. Like it's frustrating that yeah, we're still in where we are now, but hopefully that will change in the future, and yeah, there'll be plenty of people doing it how we do it.
Yeah. And do you have any plans, now that the world is a little more open, have you got any other plans for big mountains or travel?
We'll see. Like I got back from a trip about 2 or 3 months ago, which was the eighth highest in the world, called Manaslu, and that didn't go very well. The we were ready to summit, and we kind of made our way to up the camps, but then we were hit with a big avalanche, which took out like we were going from camp 2 to camp 3, but then our Sherpas were going from 3 to 4, and it wiped out 6 of them and swept them down like 600 meters. One of them died, unfortunately, and then 2 were airlifted to hospital. So yeah, at that point, that was it. I was finished. Like there was no way I was gonna kind of A, go through that section again, but B, force the Sherpas, which are helping us, to go back through it again as well. Knowing full well that they're so humble and like accommodating that if I demanded to summit, they would 100% help me. But yeah, that wouldn't be fair. And yeah, the mountain's not going anywhere, so if I want to climb, I can go back again. But for the time being, I'll go back to ultra running this year, I think. Got a few plans. There's a 100-mile race in April in the Grampians, which I'm hoping to race, and then a crazy one in Wales in the UK in September, which yeah, we'll see how that one goes. But that's the rough plan for this year,
When
at
you say
least.
when you say crazy, please explain crazy.
It's basically from the north of Wales to the south across 6 days, and it's 19,000 meters of elevation, so like 2 and a bit Everests. And then the first day I think is around 40 kilometers, the second day is about 60 kilometers, and then the next 4 days are about 70 kilometers each. Yeah, so we'll see. That's a bit of a dream at the moment, but I've got a few people that want to do it as well. So and the best thing about that one is all the catering is plant-based.
Yeah.
They've got like an environmental commitment, so you get back from this horrific day, and then we'll have a full spread of hopefully delicious plant-based food. And yeah, that's probably the main reason I want to do it, actually. So
it's pretty cool. That sounds
yep.
quite like ahead of its time. I mean, for us anyway, here in Australia, that seems to something we haven't really thought of yet and put into events.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah, the UK, I was back there last Christmas, and they do seem to be like striding in quite a few different fronts at the moment. And yeah, hopefully we'll get there as well.
Yeah. Trail running, was that sort of before mountaineering for you? Like, was that a hobby long before you ever decided to climb mountains?
No, I kind of got I did it as a kid, like cross country at school, and I used to hate the racing. I just liked training and getting dirty and muddy and everything. And then sort of grew up and stopped doing that. Then my dad was always running, and he did 17 London marathons in a row. So that was always like going on and around. And he'd always use running like as a way to relax. And I just thought it was crazy, because who runs marathons to relax? Like, no one. And then fast forward however many years, and I'm doing the same thing, but taking it a bit further. But yeah, I kind of started trail running because of Nepal, really. Wanting to go back and get stronger and do bigger things meant you have to train harder. And well, suddenly, when you start training these things, you end up spending more time in nature as well, which has a huge amount of other benefits as well, mainly sort of mentally. And then yeah, you kind of just get hooked on trail running as well. And I think like it was at the start back then when I went vegan as well, and I was doing sort of really big training days, training weekends. Like I could do like hours of training on the Sunday, and then wake up in Monday morning and just not have any aching, any soreness whatsoever. And I kind of didn't really know that was a thing at the time. And then the more I started following plant-based athletes, and the more I realized that there may be something to do with the diet in this. And it seems like one of the most consistent things that comes out from athletes and plant-based diets is just really good recovery, which I've definitely experienced over the last few years for sure.
Yeah. And tell us about this concept I've seen on your Instagram, plogging. Like, explain this to people.
Oh, plogging, I think it originated in Europe somewhere, and it's basically you go for a jog and you have a plastic bag and you just pick up rubbish as you go, basically. So because the runners can get into far more like remote areas than your council sort of cleaning up the cycle paths and everything, it means we can pick up like rubbish on the trails and as we go. But luckily where I live, which is close to the Dandenong Ranges, I never see any litter in the park itself, which is great. So I never really, it's just like the cycle path on the way to the hills. There's a few bits and bobs, and you can pick that up as well. If everyone does that, then it stays pretty clean. And it's but people see you doing it as well. Like sometimes I'll just keep the area around my house clean and just go out every now and then with a bag, and people absolutely love it, and people thank you and show their kids, and it's just a very positive thing to do.
Something that I had read in, I think it was Beyond Possible, maybe, was that I hadn't really thought about was, like Everest in terms of the environmental impact of like everyone trying to climb it, and that there is often there's quite a bit of environmental damage. Like, I guess like what's been your perspective on that?
Yeah, so if you watch enough documentaries and read enough books, you'll realize that they all have this litter section where they'll show like a few pictures off the internet of like rubbish, and it looks terrible, and it was. But basically, more is coming down. Like no one drops rubbish that I've ever seen, and basically everyone that climbs Everest pays. At the time I did it, it was like a $600 fee to the SPCC, and that's basically like the cleanup operation that's cleaning things from years gone by. And pretty much they're sort of slowly making their way up the mountain, and it's only really Camp 4 which is really quite bad. Like there's tent poles, and it's not very pleasant, but the rest of it is really clean. All the teams that go up, when they come back down, they have to check in their rubbish with someone waiting at the bottom, and if you don't bring enough, you get like thousands of dollars worth of fines. So it's kind of like the more people that go up, the kind of more cleaner it can be. And I know personally, if I did see rubbish, and everyone I ever climb with, if we see rubbish, we pick it up and we stuff it in our bag and we keep going. Yeah, there's certain situations where, like, if you go for the summit and you come back and the weather's just gone horrific and you're just literally in survival mode, then yeah, I mean, I guess in that situation, some people might not pack down a tent if they were literally running for their lives. But generally, it's pretty good. Like, another thing with these documentaries, if you watch the rest of the documentary but look in the background, tell me if you ever see one piece of rubbish. It's pristine. So they have their little litter section, and then the whole rest of the documentary is just pristine mountain and no rubbish whatsoever. So yeah, it's a bit of a weird one. They like to make the exception seem the rule because it gets people angry. Yeah. And in this age of social media, angry is engagement, basically. So if they put up, even like now, they'll put up a picture from 2019 of the big queue, even though this year there was like 14 days when people could summit, so there wasn't a single queue. They always go back to this one picture in 2019, and it gets people angry and all the comments, and yeah, but yeah, that's another exception and not the rule. So yeah, it's a bit of a crazy world.
And something as well that I've noticed you have been involved in is a couple of fundraisers. So you obviously had one more recently, the one when since you came back from that climb. You had like a GoFundMe for the climber's family, and then also as well, I think you've done was it a walk you were doing for blood cancer?
God, you've done your research. Yeah. So the sort of climb I did was in 2020. So it was a year anniversary after Everest, but then a month before that, my mum was diagnosed with leukemia, which is totally recovered from now, thankfully. But to kind of mark the Everest anniversary and then to raise some money for her chosen charity, I decided to go to, there's a hill close to me, it's about an average of 37% incline. So it goes up like 300 meters across 1 kilometer. So it's super steep. And there's a thing called Everesting, where you do repetitions of one hill without sleeping until you've reached the height of Everest. So that's what I did. I think it was 27 reps across 26 hours. And then because you not only climb the height of Everest, but you're also, because you're walking back down, you also descend the height of Everest. So yeah, and I think we earned a couple of $1,000 for that, which was great. And I got to do something silly again, which is also good. And then yeah, the recent one was for a noob who died in the avalanche, and in Nepal, basically a lot of families, Sherpa families, they're relying on the income from the climber, and then yeah, sort of when unfortunately one of them dies, all of a sudden the family have quite a lot of financial stress, because Nepal is a developing country and the women aren't treated as they should, and they're not sort of skilled or generally or having employment. So yeah, it was just to raise a bit of money to help the family. And there's also other charities involved. So there's an amazing charity called the Juniper Fund, and they work with the widows across 5 years, and they also they give them money, but then they also try to upskill the wife, get them into work, whatever that may be, and just offer as much support as they can across the 5 years. And I think they also give like about 15,000 US across those 5 years as well, which is great, because I think they've got about 60 odd widows that they're working with at the moment. And because of the culture over there, when I was chatting to them a few months ago, they said only, I think, two out of 60 have remarried. The rest, there's so much family pressure for them to not remarry for whatever reason, that yeah, it's crazy. It's a shame. And yeah, so hopefully that money can help them, and sort of it's kind of, you wish you can do more, but in reality it's, yeah, that's the best we could do. And so yeah, that kind of did pretty well. I think we've raised 7,000 Australian dollars for her, which in Nepal that goes a long way. So that should be good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, have you just I know there's a new documentary coming out. I don't think it's out yet. That I think it's called I Could Never Go Vegan. Is
Yep.
that something you featured in as well?
Yeah. So I'll be in it a couple of times, like talking about Everest, and there's some footage from Everest, I think. There's a little snippet in the trailer of me as well. We were hoping that this recent trip would be successful, and then there was going to be another part in there, but because it didn't go to plan, I don't think that's going to feature in there. But yeah, the rest of it should, and the trailer looks amazing. Like if anyone hasn't seen it yet, it's looks very sort of Netflix quality. Yeah, very excited for that.
Do you know when that comes out?
No, I don't. No, I could probably ask. It wouldn't, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. Everything, because it's a UK based documentary. Um, Lots of good things happen on Veganuary, like first of January. So, yeah, I'm just guessing here. Maybe, hopefully, then, but yeah, I don't know for sure.
Yeah, I'll put a link to the trailer in these show notes so that people can have a look because I've a friend actually showed it to me a couple of weeks ago and then you guys saw on your page that you're actually featuring it. It looks really good. A few people have noticed it's coming out, which is awesome. And what is your vegan story? Like how did you go vegan?
Yeah, so God, this was 8 years ago. I was always, yeah, a very avid meat eater. I couldn't have a meal without some kind of animal product. Even sort of beans on toast for me, I had to add bacon. Like I couldn't just have beans and bread. Um, and then yeah, like I was in Southeast Asia, and that's where the cogs started turning for me. Which in Vietnam, and I was in a situation where there was a motorbike with dogs in a cage on the back, and yeah, because of course in Vietnam they unfortunately eat dogs, and that was just horrific for me to see them treated in that way. And but then also on a similar bike, like 5 minutes later, there was a similar cage but full of chickens. And at the time, I would happily eat chickens, but then looking at them like from a meter away, I could see that they were suffering, the dogs were suffering, they're all going to meet the same fate, and none of them deserved it. So after that, I kind of started thinking a bit more deeply, and then I read Eating Animals by Jonathan Safran Foer, and I was just disgusted. I was like, I just assumed that all the animals were treated nicely and they get like, I don't know, some happy death. And then I read that book and I'm like, surely this isn't legal. Like, are there not laws preventing this kind of thing happening for animals? And then you realize that it's just the norm, and it's just the industry standard. So then straight away I was like, I have to see this. I can't just read about it. I have to see it. So I watched Earthlings, and then I literally sat up in bed at the time, and I just said, like, kind of asked myself, like, if I want to continue to regard myself as an animal lover, I can't keep paying for this to happen. So I either continue paying for these products and forget about calling myself an animal lover, or I just stop eating animals. And that was it. I never ate meat again after that. It still took a couple of years for the dairy and the eggs to come out of the diet, because I was very I just assumed there was an equal ingredient in there somewhere which we needed because of years of conditioning. And then it got to the point where I was like, I don't even care if I'm going to be less healthy. I can't pay for these products anymore. And then I started doing research and reading a couple of books, like Rich Roll's book and Scott Jurick's book. They're both sort of ultra runners, athletes. And I was like, wow, you can actually like not just survive on this diet, but thrive as well. And then that's when, yeah, I started going to Nepal and everything just went up and up. So yeah, never looked back. And yeah, it's like I couldn't imagine paying for any of that again. It's yeah, it's I'm as likely to eat my sofa as I am like another animal product again. It's just there's people. I even got asked the other day. I'm like, they're like, what do you miss? Like, surely there's something you miss. And I'm like, what do you miss about eating a dog? They're like, oh, I'd never do that. I was like, yeah, same with me. It's not even a question. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm guessing you would get quite a few people, like you said, on especially when you're summiting and things, people do ask you all these kind of questions. Are you generally met with like shock? Like, are people quite shocked that you're vegan?
Um, no, not really. I think it's like I don't really get the protein question, which is great. I think that fizzled out quite a few years ago, generally. Um, no, not surprised. I think it's quite people are a lot more. It's a bit more normal now. People know athletes and friends that are vegan. Um, yeah, so I don't really get too much kickback for it.
Yeah. And outside of, mountaineering and being a vegan athlete, like, is there other ways that you do try and, spread the animal rights or vegan message?
Um, just sort of, I never hold back. I do a lot of running, and I put a lot out on social media. Everyone knows that I'm vegan, so you get a lot of questions, a lot of people wanting advice. Um, so yeah, I've kind of helped quite a few people go vegan just through running clubs alone. Um, yeah, I don't really do any other activism, which now that if I'm not going to do any big mountains anytime soon, then I feel like I definitely need to get involved a bit more with something. Because you always hear that the best kind of activism is to link it to whatever you're good at or skilled at or passionate about. And for me, that was mountaineering. So yeah, if I could, yeah, through social media, just show what you can do in these big mountains without using animals, then that was my way. But yeah, I think I need to do something a bit more these days. So watch this space.
Absolutely. And do you happen to have a favorite quote that you'd like to share?
I think one of the things that I like to say is if I can kind of summit the highest mountain in the world without using any animal products, then surely people in their day-to-day lives can manage sort of doing the same as well. But yeah, other people's quotes, yeah, that requires me remembering them for a start, which is not going to happen.
Did you have anything though that got you through the hard times at Everest? Like, is there any kind of mantra or anything you used to think about when it was getting tough?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like Everest there's a lot of suffering going on as you're climbing up because it's cold, it's windy, you can't breathe. And the whole time I just think about like the animals basically. Like this is hard for me, but just it's nothing compared to what they go through. Just for a 5 minute taste sensation. So that's always in the back of my mind, just thinking about the animals and the suffering that they have no choice but to endure. I choose to endure the suffering on a big mountain, but hopefully it's to promote a good cause. So
absolutely.
And it was similar when I got to the summit actually. Like there's a video on my Instagram where I whip out my GoPro and sort of take the final steps. But in those final steps, in my mind, I was thinking like, just hopefully this can have some like positive effect for the animals. Like hopefully this can help someone make the switch, inspire someone, encourage someone to make a few little changes in their life for the better. But then also when you get to the top, you have to come back down again. So it's you're only halfway there. But,
yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. I'm really grateful. And it does sound like you're happy for people to reach out if they have any specific questions for you. Is that the best way through Instagram?
Yep. No, I love helping people and giving advice as within the limits of what I know. So
Awesome.
yeah, no, that's my favorite thing to do is help people do similar things and yeah, help in any way I can. So yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, I'll link that in the show notes. Thank you so much. It's been great to hear your story. And yeah, I really look forward to seeing what else is coming up for you, whether it be mountains or long runs. So thank you so much. Really grateful, Dean.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.